Another witness has stepped forward and the silence in Hollywood has been shattered. Blake Lively is now armed with a powerful weapon that could force Justin Baldoni to pay millions. And yet behind the curtains, the truth is even darker than anyone. Imagine shocking filings, explosive declarations, and secret testimonies are being dragged into the light. This is no longer just a legal battle. This is a fight for survival, reputations, careers, and freedom itself. Welcome to Starscope, where tonight we reveal the most dangerous twist yet in the war between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. The courtroom was heavy with tension as the newest witness emerged, their words slicing through the silence like a blade, and the atmosphere grew darker with every revelation, because this was not just another testimony. This was a weapon, and it was aimed directly at Blake Lively's enemies. But with every shocking word spoken, a new layer of mystery began to unfold, because what the world thought it knew about this battle between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni was suddenly thrown into chaos. The filings were supposed to be routine, simple motions dressed up for the headlines, but buried inside them was something no one was prepared for: a declaration. So bold and so dangerous, it threatened to blow open the carefully constructed image that both sides had been fighting to protect. And here lies the terrifying truth that Hollywood never wanted exposed. This is not a story about fame or glamour, or red carpets. This is about power control and survival. Blake Lively, backed into a corner, is now playing the most dangerous game of her career, and every move she makes is being dissected by a ruthless machine that feeds on scandal, betrayal, and blood. And what makes this even more terrifying is that her own allies may be sharpening the knives, ready to plunge them into her back. The witness did not just speak. They unleashed an avalanche of claims that painted a picture of manipulation, backroom deals, and a desperate attempt to control the narrative. The publicist, once believed to be the protector, is now under the microscope, accused of weaving lies so deep that even the star herself may not fully understand the consequences yet. The filings show that Blake Lively herself has signed off on tactics designed to crush Justin Baldoni and silence any opposition. But the danger of such tactics is that lies do not remain buried forever. They rot, they fester, they grow. And when they are finally dragged into the light, they do more damage than the truth ever could. Because every redacted witness, every shadowy testimony, every carefully crafted leak into the press carries the stench of desperation. Hollywood thrives on stories of downfall, and nothing fuels the fire like the image of a star once untouchable, now dragged into the mud of scandal and destruction. But what is most chilling is how intentional all of this feels. None of it is random. Every line, every motion, every leak carefully constructed like pieces of a deadly puzzle. But here is where the terror lies. When you play a game with this much deception, you cannot control when the pieces fall apart, because the truth has a way of clawing its way back into the light even when buried under mountains of lies. Blake Lively risks not just her reputation, not just her fortune, but her very freedom, because the filings suggest strategies so reckless that judges may soon view her not as a victim, but as a manipulator. And once a judge senses deceit, the punishment can be merciless. The witness who came forward did not just challenge Justin Baldoni. They revealed cracks in Blake Lively's own armor, cracks that the world is now watching spread like wildfire through the glossy surface of Hollywood perfection. This is a spiral, and it is tightening with every passing day. What began as a battle for public sympathy may now end in a brutal legal defeat, and worse still, the destruction of a carefully built image that took years to create. Because no amount of spin, no amount of red carpet smiles can protect you when the court system smells blood. The shocking twist here is not that Baldoni is fighting back. It is that Blake Lively's own team may have planted the seeds of her downfall, and the filings are proof. Every redacted name, every explosive line pulled from the shadows is one step closer to the abyss. The witness statement is more than words. It is dynamite waiting to ignite. And when it does, the blast will not only scorch Lively, it will ripple through everyone connected to her: agents, lawyers, producers. Even her closest allies who once saw her as untouchable are now whispering behind closed doors. Could she fall? Could this be the scandal that finally destroys her? And the answer is no longer unthinkable, because the filings are real. The testimony is live, and the stage is set for a collapse, so massive that Hollywood may never forget it. This is not just law, this is war. And in this war, Blake Lively may already be losing without even realizing the walls are closing in. The question is not if the truth comes out, the question is when and how devastating it will be when it does. The story does not slow down. It accelerates, like a runaway train barreling toward disaster, because after the witness testimony that sent shockwaves through the courtroom, a new storm erupted, one that not only involved Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, but pulled in names from every corner of Hollywood, and turned this already messy scandal into a full-blown circus of betrayal, manipulation, and unimaginable consequences. Rebel Wilson suddenly became part of the narrative, and her involvement triggered whispers that this was no longer a contained, legal feud, but a sprawling battlefield where every player had something to lose. Rebel had already been dealing with lawsuits of her own lawsuits that painted her as reckless, manipulative, and willing to scorch the earth to protect herself, and suddenly those same accusations were being tied directly to the machinery behind Blake Lively's legal war, because the same crisis PR figures, the same lawyers, the same shadowy figures working behind the scenes for Baldoni and his allies were now linked to Rebel Wilson's smear campaigns. It was as if the masks had been ripped away and the world was seeing the ugly inner workings of Hollywood power games. The filings connected names like Melissa Nathan Tagg, the agency, Brian Friedman, and even Jed Wallace into a tangled web of manipulation, smear tactics, and deliberate destruction of reputations. And if even a fraction of these connections prove true, the fallout will not stop at Blake Lively or Baldoni. It will consume everyone involved. Like wildfire racing across dry land, the new lawsuit filed in Los Angeles named Rebel Wilson Melissa Nathan, and Tagg directly accusing them of orchestrating anonymous websites, grotesque lies, and racially charged attacks designed to obliterate the reputation of producer Amanda Ghost. The parallels to the tactics used in the Baldoni versus Lively war were chilling. The same playbook, the same shadow networks, the same whispers of weaponized media. And it was here that Blake Lively's position grew more dangerous, because the lines between her case and these new revelations blurred until even the judges and reporters watching struggled to separate them. Optics are everything in Hollywood and in court, and the optics here screamed of a system of manipulation, a pattern of deception, a coordinated effort to smear, destroy, and silence opponents. The public no longer saw Lively as the glamorous victim. They saw her as part of the machine, part of the dark underbelly of Hollywood, willing to twist the truth in order to stay on top. And that perception is poison. Once public opinion shifts, once the narrative tilts against you, no amount of PR spin can undo the damage, because perception becomes reality. And juries, judges, and audiences alike breathe in the smoke of scandal and believe it to be fire. Rebel Wilson's downfall was unfolding in parallel. Her attempt to claim a writing credit, her alleged smear campaign, her reckless online posts had brought her to the brink of ruin, and now her allies were dragging Blake Lively into the quicksand with her. This was no longer a battle about one movie, one feud, one court case. It had become a symbol of the corruption and rot eating away at Hollywood from the inside. Camille Vasquez, the superstar lawyer who crushed Amber Heard in the Johnny Depp trial, entered the arena with knives sharpened, representing Amanda Ghost and her team with precision and fire. She declared war on the smear merchants, calling their tactics a cancer, poisoning the entertainment industry, and when Camille speaks, the world listens. This was the nightmare scenario for Blake Lively, because if Camille Vasquez tied her name or her team even loosely to these tactics, the court of public opinion would seal her fate before the legal system even finished its work. The filings painted Rebel as a faux feminist, a manipulator who weaponized identity and morality to crush her business rivals, and the echoes of that language bounced back toward Lively. The suggestion that Blake herself, through her filing subpoenas and crisis strategies, had weaponized victimhood to smear Baldoni whispered louder than ever. And if Rebel was exposed as a fraud, what would stop the world from assuming Blake was too? Because once a pattern is established, once a narrative of calculated manipulation emerges, every move begins to look like a piece of the same puzzle. The websites targeting Amanda Ghost were so grotesque they accused her of trafficking and pimping women, linking her to the world's most powerful men. The parallels to the defamatory websites against other women like Stephanie Jones were undeniable. The same fingerprints, the same shadows, the same smell of rot. And now those fingerprints were being traced back to Melissa Nathan Tagg and the very network tied to Lively's ongoing war. This was catastrophic because the courts love patterns, they love precedents, they love connecting dots, and suddenly, the storm deepens and the lines between truth and fabrication blur even further. As Blake Lively's case collides with Rebel Wilson's collapse, And Justin Baldoni stands at the eye of the hurricane fighting to salvage his reputation, while simultaneously being dragged deeper into the mud. The discovery process in both cases is unearthing communications, emails, and timelines that paint a picture of Hollywood power games so ruthless, so calculated, that even veteran reporters are left stunned. And the question now is no longer who is innocent or guilty, but rather who will survive the fallout. Because the legal machine does not forgive it, only consumes evidence, testimonies, and reputations and spits out broken lives. What makes this chapter even darker is the emergence of anonymous players. The websites, the ghostwriters, the unseen hands that craft narratives behind the scenes. And every breadcrumb uncovered seems to lead back to the same network, the same crisis experts, the same lawyers, the same publicists, all working together to silence opponents and destroy careers. And once that pattern becomes visible, it is impossible to ignore. Camille Vasquez is leveraging this brilliantly in court documents, weaving together the strands of Rebel Wilson's smear campaigns with the strategies used by Baldoni and his allies in their war against Lively. And if she succeeds in convincing the judge that there is a broader conspiracy of deception at play, then Lively's entire defense collapses, because her arguments of victimhood and targeted harassment begin to look suspiciously like weapons rather than shields. Meanwhile, the public is devouring every leak, every court update, every whispered rumor, because this scandal is no longer just a courtroom drama. It is entertainment. It is blood sport. And Blake Lively, the actress once adored for her elegance and charm, has now become a polarizing figure. Some see her as a desperate woman fighting for her survival, while others see her as a manipulative star willing to burn anyone who stands in her way. And the media is merciless. Headlines scream about possible prison time, about perjury, about obstruction, about calculated deception, and the phrase Blake Lively risks 5 years behind bars has become a drumbeat echoing across tabloids, social media, and late-night talk shows. The psychological toll on her must be unbearable, yet she remains mostly silent, letting her team speak for her, letting her husband shield her, letting her allies spin the story. But silence has a weight of its own. Silence becomes its own accusation. And in Hollywood, silence is rarely seen as strength. It is seen as strategy, and strategies are picked apart until nothing remains. Rebel Wilson's own unraveling is fueling this fire, because as she faces accusations of being a faux feminist, of weaponizing narratives, of orchestrating anonymous smear sites, the parallels to Lively's situation grow harder to ignore, and the world begins to ask, are these tactics common in Hollywood? Are these stars simply the visible faces of a darker machinery that uses PR spin and anonymous attacks to destroy anyone who dares to resist them? And if so, how deep does it go, and who else is complicit? Every revelation adds gasoline to the fire. Jed Wallace named in cross complaints, Melissa Nathan accused of authoring texts about grotesque smear sites, Brian Friedman tied to multiple clients whose scandals overlap like storm fronts colliding, and now even whispers of Taylor Swift. Once a friend, now a distant figure, hover in the background like a ghostly reminder that no alliance in Hollywood lasts forever. The courtroom may be the battleground, but the war is fought in the court of public opinion. And in that arena, Blake Lively is bleeding. Perception is turning faster than any PR campaign can repair, and the once untouchable actress now looks fragile, cornered, and dangerously close to collapse. The irony of it all is that Lively entered this war perhaps believing she could control it, believing her image, her grace, her husband's wealth and power could shield her from the flames, but Hollywood devours its own, and in the endless churn of scandal, reputation is currency. And once that currency is spent, there is no buying it back. The legal stakes remain brutal. Discovery is exposing private communications. Subpoenas are pulling in names from across the industry, and every new filing threatens to implicate Lively more deeply in strategies that skirt the edge of legality. And if prosecutors or judges decide that perjury, obstruction, or conspiracy have taken place, then prison is no longer a sensational headline, but a real possibility. Rebel Wilson is already cornered. Camille Vasquez is relentless, and every win against Rebel reverberates against Lively, because the tactics overlap, the machinery overlaps, and once the world sees a pattern, it assumes guilt across the board. Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni continues to posture as the wronged party, but even he is not immune to the fallout. His allies are named, his strategies exposed, and though he may emerge legally stronger, the stain of these revelations may cling to him for years because Hollywood forgives a lot, but it does not forget the optics of manipulation, the optics of smear campaigns. The optics of secret websites and anonymous attacks are poison in an industry built on illusion and reputation. And in this poisoned atmosphere, Blake Lively stands in the center. Her name tied to every whisper, her image collapsing under the weight of scandal, and yet the most shocking part of all is that this may only be the beginning. More lawsuits are brewing. More players are being dragged into the narrative, more revelations lie buried in discovery waiting to explode like landmines. And every explosion pushes Lively closer to the edge, closer to the unthinkable possibility that she could face real criminal consequences. Not just tabloid humiliation, not just a ruined career, but prison time. The whispers of 5 years behind bars are not fading. They are growing louder, and as Camille Vasquez sharpens her knives, as Rebel Wilson crumbles as Baldoni maneuvers, as the media feasts, the world watches, wondering how much longer Blake Lively can withstand the storm before it consumes her completely. The case spirals into chaos as fresh revelations explode across Hollywood, shaking even those who thought themselves untouchable. And the pressure on Blake Lively mounts to unbearable levels, because while the headlines scream about her potential prison sentence, the behind-the-scenes maneuvers are even darker, and more relentless secret meetings between attorneys, rival PR teams, and studio executives paint the picture of a city in panic, as everyone wonders who will be next to be named in filing subpoenas or leaked emails. The sheer scale of this legal and public relations war is staggering, and what began as a clash between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni has mutated into something far larger, a battle that threatens to rip open the entire underbelly of Hollywood. Because every player dragged into discovery brings new secrets, and those secrets connect to other scandals, and suddenly we are no longer talking about a single lawsuit, but about an ecosystem of power manipulation. And silence Rebel Wilson is being obliterated by Camille Vasquez's relentless precision. Each document, each timeline, each contradiction, dismantling her carefully constructed image as a fearless truth-teller, and as Rebel crumbles, her tactics look eerily familiar to the ones allegedly deployed by lively anonymous blogs, smear sites, whispers fed to tabloids, and the suggestion that a larger network coordinates these efforts casts a shadow that stretches across agents, producers, managers, and lawyers. The whispers become deafening: who is funding these operations, who benefits from the destruction of careers, who pulls the strings. And as those questions echo through the industry, fear begins to take hold, because no one knows if they will be the next name in a filing. No one knows if their private messages will surface, and every whispered deal in every Beverly Hills mansion now carries the dread of exposure. The psychological pressure on Lively intensifies because the narrative is no longer hers to control. She is trapped in a storm she may have helped unleash, but cannot now escape. And while she maintains her silence, while her husband attempts to shield her, while her attorneys argue procedural nuances, the image of Blake Lively as America's golden girl continues to collapse. Perception is a merciless beast, and once it turns against you, there is no reclaiming it. Every red carpet appearance, every paparazzi photo, every carefully curated Instagram post becomes fuel for speculation. Is she hiding something? Is she guilty? Is she on the verge of breaking down? And the vultures of media circle ever closer. Meanwhile, the legal strategy grows more tangled with each passing week. The judge is pressured to rule on motions that could devastate Lively, financially ordering her to pay Baldoni's fees or exposing her to treble damages under California law. Yet at the same time, her attorneys maneuver to delay, to appeal, to stall, because delay means survival every week. Gained is another week to shift the narrative, to find allies, to discredit witnesses. But delay also carries its own dangers, because the longer this drags on, the more evidence emerges, and every piece of evidence becomes a weapon. Rebel Wilson's sealed declaration, redacted for now, looms ominously over the case. Speculation runs rampant about who authored it, whether it is a family member, an insider, a co-star, or an industry veteran. And though its details remain obscured, its very existence plants doubt in the public mind, and doubt is lethal. Once the idea takes root that Lively tolerated or orchestrated toxic behavior, it spreads like wildfire, and no denial can extinguish it. Even Justin Baldoni, though legally strengthened by the dismissal of certain claims, cannot emerge unscathed. His reputation is now tethered to revelations about abusive behavior, redacted testimonies and accusations that he too weaponized anonymous campaigns. And though he positions himself as the wronged party, Hollywood knows perception is reality, and perception has already turned the whispers of a wider conspiracy. Grow more insistent names like Jed Wallace, Melissa Nathan, and Brian Friedman are spoken with increasing intensity as patterns connect emails, align, and strategies overlap. The suspicion is unavoidable that a hidden machinery exists, one that uses stars as pawns, one that destroys rivals through smear campaigns, one that weaponizes both traditional and social media to silence and control. And if such a machinery exists, then Blake Lively is not merely a victim or a manipulator. She is a symbol of how far Hollywood will go to protect its own power, even at the cost of burning one of its brightest stars. The stakes escalate. Further when financial realities emerge, the daily legal costs, the endless filings, the armies of attorneys, the private investigators, the PR operatives. It is a bonfire of millions, and each day brings the risk that Lively could lose not just her career and her freedom, but her fortune as well. The threat of bankruptcy looms alongside the threat of prison, and for a star who built her empire on the image of glamour and stability, the collapse of that image would be catastrophic. Yet the true horror lies not in the money, not even in the prison sentence, but in the erasure of trust. Once an actress is seen as a manipulator, once her authenticity is doubted, she becomes toxic to studios, to brands, to audiences. And that toxicity is contagious, spreading like an infection until even her allies begin to distance themselves. The silence of former friends is deafening. Where are her co-stars, her collaborators, her allies in the industry? Why has Taylor Swift remained silent? Why do so many figures who once celebrated her now avoid her name? The absence of support is its own indictment, and it tells Hollywood that Lively's value is dwindling. The courtroom battles rage on with procedural skirmishes. But outside those walls, the real war is perception, and perception is slipping further and further away every day that Rebel Wilson crumbles under Vasquez's assault. Every day that Baldoni maneuvers for sympathy, every day that new filings introduce fresh names into the scandal, Lively is dragged closer to the edge. The whispers of 5 years behind bars are no longer just headlines. They are possibilities, real tangible consequences that hang over her like a guillotine waiting to fall. And in that shadow, Hollywood trembles. Because if Blake Lively can fall, if Rebel Wilson can collapse, then no one is safe. The machinery devours Alland. So we arrive at the edge of the storm, where all illusions have been stripped away, and the truth stands like a blade waiting to cut through what remains of Blake Lively's carefully constructed image. The Golden Girl of Hollywood now finds herself portrayed as both manipulator and pawn. A woman whose choices or whose silence may have triggered a chain of events that spiraled beyond her. Control the Courtroom is no longer just a place of justice. It is a stage upon which reputations, careers, and even futures are destroyed. And the whispers of 5 years behind bars echo louder than ever, casting a shadow across every red carpet memory. Every glamorous photo shoot, every interview where she once smiled effortlessly. The battle with Justin Baldoni, the collapse of Rebel Wilson under Camille Vasquez, the redacted testimonies, the endless filings. They are not isolated skirmishes, but pieces of a war that reveals the machinery of Hollywood at its darkest, a machinery that devours its brightest stars. The question now is not whether Blake Lively will survive the trial, but whether she will ever recover from the stain of this scandal. For even if she escapes prison, even if her legal team maneuvers her to safety, the world has already seen behind the curtain, and what has been revealed cannot be unseen. Hollywood's golden image is shattered. The empire has cracked, and as the industry trembles under the weight of exposure, one truth becomes undeniable. Nothing will ever be the same again.